Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luna Palace. Ziyuan sat at the gate full of vigor. Originally, Qin Feng kissed Princess Nan Feng in the arena during the day, which made her very angry, but who knew that he would not sleep at night, and sneaked out again with Xiao Bai. You don't need to think about it, you must be looking for that little bitch, Princess Nan Feng. She couldn't figure it out. If she wanted good looks, good figure, status, why couldn't she be as fragrant as the wildflower Princess Nan Feng? Humph, this goddess will never forgive him this time. Ziyuan sat at the gate full of anger, waiting for Qin Feng to take the initiative to come and talk to her. Hey, why are you here? As soon as Qin Feng came back, he saw Ziyuan sitting at the gate. At this moment, he found that Ziyuan had really grown up. If Ziyuan was in bud 7 years ago, now it is in full bloom, with a soft and plump body, a slim waist like a willow, fair skin, and slender legs suitable for carrying shoulders. People are pursuing poetry and distance, but ignore the beauty around them. Feeling Qin Feng's unscrupulous eyes, Ziyuan's pretty face flushed, and most of the anger in her heart disappeared immediately, but thinking that the problem of Qin Feng not returning home at night was very serious, she immediately asked angrily, "You are so late at night. Where did you go again?" Qin Feng looked at Ziyuan's questioning tone of a lady in the palace. How could he dare to say that he went to sleep for a long night without heart, and took the rabbit to molesting other people's wives? "I'm going to buy you a midnight snack." Qin Feng took out a portion of rujiamo, the one without salt. Real. Ziyuan's eyes were full of doubts. She took the rujiamo and took a bite. No salt. Just when Ziyuan was puzzled, Qin Feng exchanged another bunch of purple roses from the system, and said with infinite affection in his eyes, "Loving you doesn't need to be salty." Woohoo! Ziyuan's small face instantly turned red, like a locomotive in motion, and her little heart was bumped like a deer by Qin Feng. Hate. Ziyuan blushed shyly and ran away, taking Megue away as well. As for the rujiamo without salt, it tastes particularly delicious. I think this business can be done. Xiao Bai looked at the back of Ziyuan trotting away. His greatest wish in this life was to sell Qin Feng for money. Should I stop them? Luna floated in the air, seeing everything that happened just now, and felt entangled in his heart whether to stop Ziyuan and Qin Feng. As Ziyuan's aunt and elder, she naturally hopes that Ziyuan will be happy, but she really can't see through Qin Feng. From the fact that he dug out his younger brother's supreme bone with his own hands, it can be seen that he is a little more than ruthless. But during the 7 years in the Moon God Palace, except for occasionally molesting the disciples of the Moon God Palace, he never did a single outrageous thing, but that rabbit often caused troubles and became the #1 negative teaching material of the Moon God Palace. But recently, I don't know what's wrong with Qin Feng. He is so arrogant that he dares to auction the Xiazi's disciples in the street, and dares to force Princess Nan Feng of Daxia to kneel in the street, and even belittles Princess Nan Feng in the competition. Forget it, let the young people do it themselves. Luna soon felt relieved, and it might not be a bad thing for her to let Ziyuan feel the sting of love while she is young. At this time, Qin Feng returned to the room and began to exchange shotguns for cannons. The villain points have reached 1047 million points, which can be exchanged for a Dzogchen realm, a god-level treasure box for completing the mission, and a lucky draw opportunity for Feng Chang after he is blackened. Exchange for a 100% compatible card first. Qin Feng began to call the system, 100% Dawei Tianlong. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for spending 100 million villain points and successfully redeeming the Dzogchen 100% fit card. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for using the Dzogchen 100% fit card. Dawei Tianlong has reached the Dzogchen realm. Roar. There was a crisp dragon chant sound coming from Qin Feng's body, and the golden dragon-shaped tattoo on his body also became more lifelike, like a vivid real dragon coiled on his body. It's that dragon. Xiao Bai straightened up immediately, with an inexplicable fear in his eyes. It knows about the golden dragon pattern on Qin Feng's body, but it has never seen Qin Feng use it during the 7 years it has followed Qin Feng, so it doesn't know what the golden dragon represents. But every time it saw the golden dragon, it would feel fear, as if it had encountered some kind of nemesis, and at the moment just now, That fear deepened again. My rabbit, let's go to bed obediently. Xiao Bai took out the sage bamboo slips and spread them next to Qin Feng, yawned and fell asleep on top of it. It doesn't know what the sage bamboo slips are. It only knows that it has been used as a mat since childhood, and it is the bedding it carries around. It often dreams that it has become a student rabbit, and an old man whispers some obscure things in its ears. Article. Next is the God-level treasure chest. Qin Feng called the system and opened the God-level treasure chest. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully opening the God-level treasure chest and obtaining the Sword Intent upgrade card. Sword Intent upgrade card. Qin Feng was slightly stunned for a moment. He didn't understand what it was. The system explained. Sword intentions are graded, and the degree of comprehension of the sword is different, and the natural superimposed damage is also different. I understand, the second-level sword intent has higher damage than the first-level sword intent. Qin Feng nodded to express his understanding, and used it directly without being verbose. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for using the sword intent upgrade card, and the sword intent has been upgraded to level 2. Swallow the world with anger, sweep the world with the sword. Qin Feng's mind suddenly exploded, and 8 golden characters emerged. There was also a figure in front of him. The sword move was still the heaven-slashing sword technique he was familiar with, but it had the potential to sweep across the world when it was executed, making people feel terrified and their hairs stood on end. Xiao Bai, who had just fallen asleep, was awakened immediately, and found that Qin Feng at this time was like a peerless sword with sharpness, sword intent. Xiao Bai immediately became interested, climbed onto Qin Feng's lap to imitate, tried to comprehend Qin Feng's kendo, and prepared to be a peerless sword rabbit. I do not know how long it has been. The sword energy around Qin Feng slowly entered his body, and he gradually came to his senses. After the sword intent was upgraded to the second level, his sky-slashing and drawing sword skills became stronger. If he is now facing Feng Chang in the daytime, he is confident that he can destroy his Buddha with a single sword, and he can still take his life. Unfortunately, Feng Chang has turned black. Qin Feng thought of the blackened Feng Chang, and didn't know whether the second-level sword intent could defeat him. However, it is not his style to fight head-on, and he should carry forward the spirit of the old six and stab a knife in the back. Qin Feng found something on his lap, looked down, and saw that Xiao Bai was lying on his lap and sleeping soundly, with the snot bubbles growing and shrinking with its breathing. For this little thing, Qin Feng didn't bother, calling the system to use a lottery. Whoa! The big turntable appeared in front of Qin Feng's eyes, and it began to turn slowly. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for winning the lottery. Chapter 52 Gather the 7 Chosen Sons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for winning the God-level physique, the heavenly domineering physique, celestial overlord physique, God-level combat physique. The owner's physique is extremely tyrannical, known as the indestructible golden body. It's actually a special physique. Qin Feng's eyes lit up on the spot, and he took pictures of Xiao Bai's buttocks excitedly. In the 7 years since he came to the Moon God Palace, the reason why he kept a low profile was not only to strengthen his own foundation, but also because the entire ancient world knew what his perfect body looked like. It may be easy to crush other people, but when encountering an unreasonable creature like the Chosen One, if you don't have a whole card in your hand, it is a very dangerous behavior. Now that he has this heavenly hegemony body, he has an extra guarantee of security. Come on. Xiao Bai clicked his lips, and didn't intend to wake up. After feeling his butt being spanked, he skillfully changed his position and continued to sleep. Boom. There was a thunder in Qin Feng's mind, and his consciousness seemed to travel back to the ancient battlefield, killing sound, shaking the sky. Blood, scorching blood spurting and splattering, the earth was trembling, and the dark figures were rampaging on the battlefield, and the condensed power made the world change color. On the opposite side, a tall figure, holding a war halberd, stepped on the ground full of blood and corpses, and rushed towards the countless enemy troops in the most blatant posture. I thought it was a battle without any suspense, but one person with one halberd, tireless, blood makes him excited, killing makes him crazy. Fuck. Qin Feng couldn't help swearing, and his consciousness returned to reality. As expected of a fighting physique, it was born for fighting. No matter how many people are facing me, I can do it alone. This is the celestial hegemony body. It's too scary. Qin Feng couldn't help but clenched his fists, and he could clearly feel the strength in his body. Also, his body became stronger and stronger. If Princess Nanfeng stabbed him with a dagger, it might not be able to pierce his skin. Coupled with the 33-day fortune art he practiced, its terrifying healing ability, if you want to kill him, you have to gather at least 7 chosen sons, and even one less can cause fatal damage to him. Boom. Just then, a bell rang. If I remember correctly, the once-in-a-decade knockout match of life and death has begun. 10 young practitioners were selected from hundreds of millions of young practitioners to participate in the competition. It can be said that these 10 young practitioners are already considered to be one day out of 10,000, but in the eyes of the Inuit dynasty, it was obviously not enough. They had to select 10 talents from the 1,000 talents to train them by raising gu. Cultivating these 1,000 people into true arrogance is also the backbone of the future of the Inuit dynasty. The way to climb up in the Yinuhuang dynasty is there. As long as you have the ability, you can climb all the way to the peak. Has it started? Qin Feng is very interested in this life and death knockout competition. He heard that the death rate in each session can be as high as 50, which means that 10 people participate, and only 5 people can come out alive, but even if they are not selected by the Inuit dynasty in the end, these 5 people are still the targets of the major forces. At this time as the bell of the life and death knockout match rang, projections also appeared in the major cities of the Inuit dynasty. You can use spells to project the live images to the major cities, which is equivalent to a live broadcast. Before the start of the life and death knockout round, there was also a ranking list of comprehensive combat strength, which was jointly evaluated by many martial arts masters. Qin Feng is currently ranked outside the th place. No way, Qin Feng only ranks Everyone exclaimed and couldn't believe their eyes. Even if Qin Feng didn't have any outstanding records in the past 7 years, and he didn't have an advantage in cultivation and age in the life and death knockout competition, the number 3 Tianjiao in Huanggu wouldn't be ranked more than In the face of doubts, a young lady appeared on the projections in the major cities, and beside her was a white-haired old man named Ma Daigua, a famous martial arts master of the Inuit dynasty. The young lady said in a sweet voice, "For everyone's doubts, we have invited the well-known martial arts master Ma Daigua to analyze for you why Qin Feng is ranked more than 3. Hello, everyone, the founder of Hunyuanjin, Ma Daigua." After Ma Daigua waved his hand and introduced himself, he began to analyze. The reason why Qin Feng is ranked outside the th place is the conclusion drawn after repeated analysis by us martial arts experts. The conclusion is mixed but not refined. Miscellaneous but not refined. The young lady cooperated and wondered. That's right, Ma Daigua continued. As we all know, Qin Feng can make countless powerful people go crazy with just one ability, but it is precisely because so many abilities converge on one person that his energy is scattered. It can be seen that it took 7 years to break through the extraordinary 9th level. I see. That the audience suddenly realized that it was better than 10 years of reading. Ma Daigua is like Kulan possessed, and analyzed. It can also be seen from the battle between Qin Feng and Fang Cheng that his sword intent has not broken through the 2nd level, and a person who comprehended sword intent and invincible sword heart at the age of 8 peerless Tianjiao. He hasn't comprehended the 2nd level sword intent in 7 years, which is obviously caused by distraction. The audience nodded again and again. Thinking that it made sense, Ma Daigua said again, Qin Feng's age and cultivation level are not dominant in this life and death knockout competition, and he is mixed but not skilled. It's like a carp crossing a river, there are as many as, but Qin Feng's transcendent 9th layer is the bottom of the existence, so it is reasonable to rank Qin Feng outside the th place. The young lady couldn't help asking, then do you think Qin Feng will break through the siege like a dark horse, and finally win the knockout round of life and death? Absolutely impossible, Ma Daigua's deputy expert said to himself. Qin Feng is currently at the bottom of the cultivation base, the bottom of the age, mixed but not skilled, and has limited combat power. How could he stand out among so many masters? The audience nodded repeatedly. An expert is an expert, Ma Dugua said very seriously. This old man also advises everyone, the way of martial arts is good, not too much, just like the old man's self-created Hunyuan Jin and Wulyan whip, which are enough to rule the world. Been taught a lesson, that the audience nodded again and again, better than reading 10 years of books. At this time, the war zone where Qin Feng is located, 8 of the 10 trial members have arrived, and Qin Feng brought Xiao Bai to be late. Qin Feng. Princess Nan Feng in the crowd looked at Qin Feng with gritted teeth, wishing to kill him alive, and that rabbit was not a good thing either. She said that carrots can detoxify, but it was useless for her to eat it. In the end, she called 2 maids to survive. Chapter 53. Everyone is an adult. What happened last night? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qin Feng, it's Qin Feng, that the audience around them all exclaimed. After Ma Daigua's comments, everyone was not optimistic about Qin Feng, thinking that there was a high probability that he would not come to participate in the life and death knockout competition, but he did not expect that he would come in the end. What's the situation? Qin Feng touched his face in doubt, wondering why everyone looked at him like this. Has he become handsome again? Is this rabbit your spiritual pet? The man in black came to Qin Feng's side and asked, looking up and down at Xiao Bai on Qin Feng's shoulder. According to the rules of the life and death knockout competition, there are no rules in the competition, and you can bring your spiritual pet to participate in the battle. Of course, the prerequisite is that the level of the spiritual pet cannot be too high, otherwise it will be judged as cheating. Qin Feng nodded. Rabbit. The people around couldn't help but look at each other. They really couldn't understand this ancient arrogance. It's fine to use the most indiscriminate means to win, but he even took a rabbit to participate in the life and death knockout competition. This is because he knows that he can't get a good ranking, so he started to play badly. Extraordinary 9 layers, you can participate. That the man in black could see through Xiao Bai's cultivation at a glance, and he was at the 9th level extraordinary just like Qin Feng. It's just that he didn't underestimate this cute rabbit like others, because he saw that it was a strange species among monsters, with extremely terrifying potential and abilities. Add to that its deceptively cute appearance, and anyone who dares to underestimate this rabbit will suffer a lot. 9 are here, 1 more. That the man in black scanned the crowd and knew that there was still 1 square length left. Will Feng Chang come? Princess Nan Feng looked around anxiously, looking for Feng Chang's figure. After she survived with the help of 2 maids last night, she wanted to go to Feng Chang to tell her grievances, but who knew that Feng Chang had already left, and no one even knew where he had gone. Does he still mind? Princess Nan Feng was very depressed, and it was all the fault of that bitch Qin Feng. Boom. A figure descended from the sky and landed heavily in front of everyone. Feng Chang. Everyone in the audience couldn't help but exclaimed, and couldn't believe their eyes. I saw Feng Chang's disheveled hair, smoky makeup, and an extremely evil aura fluctuating around him, which was a complete change from the sunny boy before. Enchanted. Princess Nanfeng's eyes widened in disbelief. Her head was a little dizzy and she almost couldn't stop. She really couldn't believe it. Just because Qin Feng kissed her, Feng Chang couldn't bear it and chose to become a demon. His heart is too fragile. 1,000 years of cultivating the Tao is not as good as becoming a demon overnight. Everyone around sighed, all feeling sorry for Feng Chang. Becoming a demon allows one to gain powerful power in a short period of time, but this kind of power is also extremely easy for people to lose themselves, and eventually become a real demon, bloodthirsty, lawless, and become the public enemy of the entire ancient times. Enchanted. The man in black frowned, feeling a bad premonition. According to the rules of the life and death knockout competition, demonic players can participate, but the opponent is a disciple of the Son of Heaven of Daxia, and he is specially approved by the Emperor of the 6 Paths to participate. Is it really good to let him in to kill? But after thinking about it, Feng Chang's talent is very terrifying. If he dies in the life and death knockout round, it can be regarded as one less powerful enemy for the Inuit dynasty in the future. Why does it feel like a cheap puppet show? Qin Feng looked at Feng Chang, and the more he looked at it, the more he felt cheap. Qin Feng, I will tear your corpse into thousands of pieces. Feng Chang's eyes were as calm as water, but there was a murderous air. To this, Qin Feng responded by turning around and coming to Princess Nan Feng, and said very deeply, everyone is an adult, so let's pretend that what happened last night never happened. You. Princess Nan Feng was extremely angry, but there was something dodging in her eyes. Whoa. The audience erupted in an instant, so Qin Feng must speak in detail. They really want to know what happened between him and Princess Nan Feng last night, and what else needs to be mentioned that everyone is an adult. Qin Feng. Feng Chang was almost driven into a madness by Qin Feng, and the evil spirit around him also began to rise steadily. You think I'm afraid of you? Qin Feng is not at all cowardly. No matter whether you are insane or infatuated, there is nothing that a bottle of Sao can't solve with madness. Just use 100 bottles. For this life and death knockout match, he prepared a whole 1,000 caddies. Everyone is here, the life and death knockout match begins. Feeling the tense atmosphere between the two, the man in black hurriedly announced the start of the life and death knockout match. He quickly pinched out a finger and pointed a little harder into the void. Boom. A black hole suddenly opened in the void, and the strong suction sucked 10 people into it. When Qin Feng opened his eyes again after experiencing the spinning of the sky and the earth, he and Xiaobai had already appeared in a dimensional space similar to a ruin, covered by a vast forest, and the roar of monsters came from time to time. According to the rules of the life and death knockout competition, different points can be obtained by hunting monsters of different levels. It will last for 3 days, and the top 1,000 players will win. This is the battlefield of life and death. Xiaobai stood on Qin Feng's shoulder and looked around. He didn't see Feng Chang and the other 9 people. They should have been randomly teleported into the battlefield of life and death. At the same time, it also sensed that there were many terrifying monsters around it and Qin Feng, with their extraordinary 9th level cultivation, were not even qualified to be cannon fodder here. The battlefield of life and death really deserves its reputation. Qin Feng looked down, and there were bones everywhere, including human beings and monsters. The whole battlefield was filled with an inexplicable cold air. Boom. There was an explosion not far away, accompanied by the sound of fierce fighting. Someone has already handed over. Qin Feng frowned, turned and walked in the opposite direction. Now, apart from the candidates entering the arena, there is also a large group of monsters watching. Joining the battle now will not only earn less, but will also lead to a big melee. It is best to avoid fighting as much as possible in the early stage, and save your strength to harvest wildly in the later stage. As 100,000 candidates entered the battlefield of life and death one after another, all battle scenes, large and small, were projected, making it enjoyable for everyone to watch. On the standings, there is also a battle between dragons and tigers, and you chase after me. But Qin Feng, known as the pride in the ancient times, did not move. The whole day passed and his points were still 0, which made people have to believe Ma Daigua's comments. Qin Feng really couldn't make a big wave. Occasionally, Qin Feng was photographed in 1 or 2 shots, and he was hiding by the river with a rabbit to fish. He didn't look like he was participating in a life and death knockout match, but more like going on an outing. The next day, Qin Feng calculated the time and felt that it was almost time. Are we going to fight? Xiaobai screamed in excitement, and hurriedly helped Qin Feng carry the long sword Excalibur. How did I teach you when I was young? Confucius said, a gentleman is not a weapon. Qin Feng felt that iron could not be made into steel, and a real gentleman would disdain to kill each other with weapons. After a whole day of fierce fighting yesterday, those Tianjiao must be extremely thirsty. As long as they drop a few caddies of sows in the water source, they will be crazy and wait for the points to be delivered to their door. Chapter 54. Never seen such a brazen person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There's still this kind of coquettish operation. Xiao Bai's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he realized that he still had a long way to go. Plop. Qin Feng took out a jar from his portable space and threw it into the river. The sows with at least a dozen caddies in it were also crazy. At this time, the live broadcast shot was shown to Qin Feng, and all the audience went crazy. Fuck, he actually carries so much with him. What is the #1 pride in the ancient times? this is the #1 slut in the ancient times. No wonder he didn't leave after finding the water source yesterday. It turned out that he was thinking about it. I have to say that the plan was very successful. Not necessarily. Those who can survive yesterday's melee, who doesn't have a few brushes, how can they be fooled like this? Experienced hunters may not, but they are all children in their 20s, how much experience do they have? Is this next scene I can watch without paying? Protest, strongly protest Qin Feng's behavior. I advise you to mind your own business, that when some monsters came to the river to drink the water, they immediately froze. There are monsters. Facing the point sent to their door, the examinees took out their weapons and rushed to fight. It's just that they obviously underestimated how uncomfortable the monster beast was at this time. After being attacked by the candidates, they launched an extremely violent attack on it, and only wanted to quickly deal with the opponent so that they could deal with serious business. The time, with a radius of 20 miles around the source of water, battles of all sizes are constantly ringing out. Wow, the battle is so intense. Qin Feng could clearly feel the intensity of the battle, which was much more intense than the melee on the first day. It's quite intense. Xiaobai nodded his head while eating fresh carrots, and could hear screams coming from the forest from time to time. You can also see some distressed examinees appearing by the river. After the first day's melee and the violent battle of the monsters just now, they are already thirsty. Drink. Wait, why do I feel something is wrong? Candidates who finished drinking the water looked at each other, and they felt pretty when they saw their friends. Illusion. The candidates were startled and quickly shifted their gaze. It's just that when a few beautiful figures appeared by the river, they couldn't hold back anymore and ran up. What do you want to do? Several young ladies and sisters raised their brows, feeling that they were not kind. Don't be nervous, we just want to be friends. The men's eyes were glowing red, and they couldn't help laughing. No, go back. Ladies and sisters don't know what they want to do, but they are still surrounded by each other. Just when the ladies were feeling desperate, a voice full of justice descended from the sky. Bold lunatic, let go of those girls. Qin Feng was dressed in white clothes, falling like an exiled immortal. He was simply the light of righteousness. It's Qin Feng. The young ladies hid behind Qin Feng as if they had seen a savior. Go away. The men's eyes were completely red, and they didn't pay attention to Qin Feng at all. Call out. An extremely sharp wind suddenly came through the air, and the power carried by the wind made the men regain some sense. Not daring to have any hesitation, he stomped his feet suddenly, trying to step back. Boom. The invisible sword energy released by Qin Feng was faster than their retreating speed, flickering past, and a striking bloody light appeared below. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully smashing Yongji and getting 1000 villain points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully smashing Yongji and getting 1000 villain points. Every system prompt sounded, accompanied by a crackling sound. What? More than a dozen men were lying on the ground crying, and Xiaobai even took the opportunity to take away their storage bags. Small money. Xiaobai's eyes flickered with the light of a money fan, and he said in his heart that he was going to get rich. After Qin Feng harvested the eggs, he said righteously, for the sake of God's good life, I will punish you in a small way and admonish you in a big way. I hope you can do it yourself. So handsome, that the eyes of the ladies and sisters are full of love, and they can't wait to promise them with their bodies. The audience outside the stadium were speechless, saying they had never seen such a brazen person. That if they hadn't known that the culprit was Qin Feng, they would have believed that he was a hero and an honest gentleman who saved the beauty. Thank you. Some men even cupped their fists to thank Qin Feng. If Qin Feng hadn't appeared in time, he might have made a big mistake. The audience outside the arena was completely speechless, and they called him a good guy in their hearts. This is a typical case of being sold by someone, and even counting the money. You must be stupid in cultivation. In the end, more than a dozen men had to voluntarily give up the life and death knockout due to serious injuries, and the points accumulated earlier belonged to Qin Feng, which made Qin Feng's ranking soar. Moon Dynasty, in the palace of the Emperor of the Six Paths. A majestic man in a black robe sits in the center. He is the boss of the Inui dynasty. the Emperor of the Six Paths. Beside him is a group of powerful bosses, including Luna and Princess Nan Feng, who were also invited to watch the battle. As the Great Xia mission, the purpose of their mission this time is for the life-and-death knockout match. The Emperor of the Six Paths asked, "Princess Nan Feng, what do you think of our Inuit dynasty's life-and-death knockout match?" "Too cruel." Princess Nan Feng was terrified when she saw it. In just one day, 2 of the contestants were killed or injured. The bloody scenes continued to challenge her nerves, and she began to worry about Feng Chang. "Cruel." The Emperor of the Six Paths smiled and said nothing more. "It may be cruel to those aristocratic families in Daxia, but for those oppressed poor families, it is an opportunity to realize their dreams." "Hey, this little guy has a lot of ideas." The projection screen switched to Qin Feng, and the leaders of all parties looked at Luna with winking eyes. "Shame." Luna is sitting on pins and needles now, wishing to find a seam in the ground to get in. She never expected that Qin Feng would defeat the enemy in this way. Even if he himself is shameless, can he consider the face of the Moon God Palace next time? At this time, the same scene was also staged in other places by the river. Qin Feng was like a hard-working bee, running wherever there were eggs. Qin Feng said seriously, "There are only 3 things to do here: beating eggs, or beating eggs." Xiao Bai also said seriously, "My rabbit only has 3 things here: to make money, and to make money." The rogue combination of 1 person and 1 rabbit quickly spread on the battlefield of life and death. Everyone also gradually realized that there was a problem with the water source. Combined with Qin Feng's previous record of using sows, it was quickly concluded that he was also crazy when he put sows in the water source. Bastard! Everyone was so angry that the roots of their teeth were itchy, and they wished to tear Qin Feng's corpse into thousands of pieces. This is not something that the #1 genius in the ancient times can do. He is simply the #1 shameless bitch in the ancient times. At the same time, everyone has to face a problem: what to do next without water. Their current cultivation has not yet entered the bigger stage, and the successive battles must not be possible without water. But now that the water source is polluted by Qin Feng, their combat effectiveness will be greatly reduced. Water is sold, and the highest price gets it. Qin Feng set up a street stall by the river, and the bottom price of a bottle of water is 1,000 top-quality spirit stones. Too shameless. The examinees finally couldn't bear it anymore, put aside all their personal grievances, and united to beat Qin Feng, a bitch. Fuck. Handsome people are really easy to target. Qin Feng was so frightened that he quickly packed up the booth and ran away. Before he left, he didn't forget to sprinkle a bottle of sows, and he was also crazy. "Everyone, we will have a long time to come." At this time, the Black and Feng Chang happened to come to the riverside. Chapter 55. 1 Red to become a Buddha, 1 to become a devil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No, hurry up and hide. When everyone saw the powder Qin Feng sprinkled, they didn't need to know that it was a sow, and they were crazy. They were so scared that they backed away again and again, for fear of ruining their fame by accident. Qin Feng. After being blackened, Feng Chang came to the river, and when he saw Qin Feng, his eyes immediately turned grim. He still doesn't know much about the shameless things Qin Feng did by the river. He only knows that the reason why he blackened himself to participate in the life-and-death knockout competition is to tear Qin Feng into pieces. Without the slightest hesitation, the blackened Feng Chang faced up to the difficulties. Damn it, so brave. All the people present admired him, and they called Lao Tai 666 in their hearts. Why did this guy come after you? Qin Feng has no intention of fighting Feng Chang for the time being. He uses his ghostly agility to freely shuttle in the forest. He intends to save his strength and save it for harvesting crazily tomorrow. For now, he still wants to draw hatred first. Qin Feng, don't run away. Feng Chang's face was terrifying, and he bit Qin Feng tightly behind him. Don't run. If you don't move, that's bastard. Qin Feng curled his lips in distaste. His body was as light as snow, and with a light tap of his toes on the branches and leaves, his figure flew thousands of meters away. Wearing white clothes, he looked like an exile flying in the air. What a great move, that the audience outside the arena couldn't help but let out a gasp of exclamation, realizing that there was still something about this ancient pride, even if his age and cultivation were at the bottom of the life-and-death knockout round. His talent was unquestionable, especially Qin Feng's full body state, which shocked the entire Huanggu when it was exposed. If it weren't for the moon god's powerful cultivation base to suppress the big bosses of all parties by himself, the major forces of the Inuit dynasty might be able to fight for Qin Feng. At the same time, everyone began to pay attention to Feng Chang. He chased Qin Feng so bravely just now, and he would more or less absorb some sows, so he must be crazy. What's going on, is that thing? Feng Chang soon noticed that something was wrong with his body. He was no stranger to Qin Feng's methods, and he had seen it when the two sides met for the first time. If he hadn't been possessed by demons, he could have suppressed them forcibly with the Buddhist exercises he practiced, but now that he has possessed demons, his mind has changed, and he can't suppress his demons anymore. At the same time, after he personally experienced that sows are also crazy, he suddenly realized a little in his heart, and felt that what he saw was not the truth. Could it be that Qin Feng gave the princess that thing? The more Feng Chang thought about it, the more he felt that there was such a possibility. He seemed to find some comfort in his heart, and began to recite the mantra of purifying the heart silently, and a big Buddha appeared behind him. It's just that this big Buddha is different from the big Buddha in everyone's impression. Half of him is a golden and solemn big Buddha, and the other half is a black and evil demon. One thought becomes a Buddha, one thought becomes a demon, that the Emperor of the Six Paths and others exclaimed in surprise, saying in their hearts that this son must not be left behind. It would be fine if Feng Chang was just possessed by demons, but what he is comprehending now is the true meaning of Buddha and demons. Once he is allowed to comprehend successfully, it is equivalent to Qin Feng comprehending the invincible sword heart and possessing the ability to suppress the contemporary. Unlike Qin Feng, who is miscellaneous but not refined, Feng Chang, who specializes in Buddhism, is bound to grow up earlier than Qin Feng, and is definitely a potential threat to the Inuit dynasty. Not good. Princess Nanfeng also realized the danger, and hurried to find the old man accompanying her for protection. Princess, don't worry, the old man's injuries have basically healed, and he can fight to the death. The old man looked extremely serious, knowing what Feng Chang meant to Xia. Please. Princess Nanfeng was still holding a fate card tightly in her hand, and would summon her father and grandfather if necessary. At this time, the projections of the major cities have all been replaced by square lengths, whether to witness the birth of a generation of Buddha or the birth of a generation of devil kings. But when people were discussing this fiercely, Qin Feng's figure suddenly appeared on the projection screen. Seeing that Feng Chang hadn't caught up, he knew that the effect of the medicine had played a role. So his sixth son's lowly nature began to move around, and finally met the chosen one. If he didn't do something to him, it didn't seem to fit his personality. It was only when he returned by the same route that he realized that the surprise came so suddenly. He is actually cleaning up. As we all know, the black is strong and invincible, and the white is 70 points weak, so when not to cut him at this time. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for triggering the mission, destroying the chosen son's way of enlightenment. Mission reward, a sword intent upgrade card. Sword intent upgrade card. Qin Feng's eyes lit up immediately, and he had no resistance to the reward. Qin Feng. There was a panic in Feng Chang's eyes. Unexpectedly, Qin Feng returned the same way. He is now at the critical moment of breaking the barrier. If Qin Feng disturbs him, he will definitely go crazy and get seriously injured. At this moment, Feng Chang no longer cared about any whole cards. A piece of golden jade flew out of his body, emitting a golden light to wrap him in it. It's the Buddha's relic, that the audience outside the arena exclaimed one after another, calling Feng Chang in their hearts what a great opportunity. The Buddha's relic is a treasure condensed after the death of the top Buddha. Wearing it on the body not only makes it invulnerable to all evils and strengthens the power of Buddhist exercises, but the Buddha's light also has a strong defense. Just relying on the Buddha's light emanating from the Buddha's relic now, not to mention Qin Feng, even if the candidates in the entire life and death battlefield add up, it may be difficult to break through. Ugh. The Emperor of the Six Paths and others sighed. knowing that everything cannot be forced, I thought that Qin Feng's return could kill Feng Chang in the cradle, but who knew that the other party's chance was so strong, and there was a Buddha's relic in his body to protect him. It's just that everyone obviously underestimated Qin Feng's shamelessness. He was not surprised by the sudden appearance of the Buddha's relic. He smiled and took out a book named by Jie's story and began to read it vividly. This bitch. Feng Chang was at a young age, and the effect of the medicine in his body hadn't passed. How could he hear such things? The demons that had just been suppressed revived, and even had a tendency to lose control. Ah! The faces of the audience outside the venue became strange. For a moment, it was unclear whether it was a serious life-and-death knockout competition or an unserious small composition reading competition. In the palace of the Emperor of the Six Paths, all the bosses looked at the moon god with strange expressions, as if they were asking, "You taught Qin Feng all these?" "I'm not. I do not have." "Don't talk nonsense." Luna hurriedly denied it 3 times, saying that he was not that kind of person. At the same time, I hated Qin Feng to death in my heart. The glorious image I had built up over the years was wiped out by this kid. Whoosh! There was a slight sound of breaking wind, which made Qin Feng's hairs stand on end. Sneak attack. The first thought that popped up in Qin Feng's mind instinctively flashed out like lightning in an instant, out of the corner of his eye. He also quickly glanced behind him, only to see a figure in the dim rainforest bending his bow and setting an arrow, shooting a scarlet feathered arrow straight to his chest like a rainbow. Boom! The slender feather arrow shot through Qin Feng's afterimage, and then stopped after shooting through several big trees. It was much more ferocious than sniping Barrett. Fuck! Qin Feng began to complain crazily in his heart, and he had a new understanding of the unreasonableness of the Chosen One. Seeing that the other party was about to be driven to death, a person appeared out of nowhere to delay the situation. "Damn it, let him avoid it." A thin man on the top of the tree cursed in a low voice, quickly drew 3 scarlet feathered arrows and shot them again. "I don't care who you are, Feng Chang, I'm determined today, even Jesus can't keep him, I said it." Qin Feng was annoyed by being shot, and felt that if he didn't show some strength, the other party would not respect him more or less. Chapter 56. Faster, Stronger, and Stronger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Call out, call out, call out. 3 feathered arrows that looked like horses flew across the sky again, pointing directly at Qin Feng's vital points. "Damn it, I'm addicted to ejaculation." Qin Feng quickly dodged cursing, and used phantom happy to the extreme, leaving afterimages in the forest. Despite this, the coldness behind Qin Feng's back has not diminished, but has become more and more intense. He has a feeling of being targeted by countless poisonous snakes, as if no matter how hard he struggles, he will be shot by the other party. "Oh my rabbit doesn't want to be shot." Xiao Bai held Qin Feng tightly to prevent himself from falling while moving at high speed. "It's daytime." The audience outside the venue immediately became excited and recognized the archer at a glance. This person's name is Bai Ri, the Bai of Bai, the son of Shooting the Sun. He is the seed player of this life-and-death knockout competition. In addition to becoming famous at a young age and possessing super talent, his cultivation has even reached the first level of Dao realm. The current points ranking has reached 153. Not surprisingly, the victory is a certainty. This day, Emperor Lu Dao and others rubbed their brows again with a headache, knowing that Feng Chang has a great opportunity in his body, and his life should not die. "Damn it, I threw your child into the well or something, chase me and come." Qin Feng also knew that there was a huge gap in cultivation between the two sides, so he decisively opened the ancient double pupil, and the whole world slowed down accordingly. "It's the ancient double pupil." The audience outside the arena screamed excitedly, and finally made them wait until Qin Feng started fighting seriously, wondering if they could see his full body. The bowstring trembled slightly. I saw that Bai Ri held a longbow like a seasoned hunter, and when he pulled the bowstring, he began to block all retreats. "Draw your sword." Almost at the moment when the other party pulled the bow and crossbow, Qin Feng pulled out the gloomy sword light from the scabbard. Different from the previous Shantian and drawing swordsmanship, the current Zhantian in drawing swordsmanship combines the second-level sword intent, as well as the blessing of the heavenly overlord body, faster, fiercer and stronger. In the blink of an eye, before Bai Ri could react, Qin Feng's figure quickly passed by him, and the long sky sword in his hand cut through the void and returned to its sheath again. How is it possible? Bai Ri's eyes widened in disbelief, and a drop of sweat slowly fell from his forehead. Bang! I saw that the longbow in Bai Ri's hand was broken, and the swordsmanship was so precise that only a bright red appeared below. At this time, the audience outside the arena was silent, shocked by Qin Feng's sky-slashing and sword-drawing skills. Nima. Do you want to be so fast? They thought it was a duel between dragons and tigers, but who knew that Qin Feng had already ended before it even started? How can that be? The Emperor of the Six Paths and other bigwigs stood up in shock, and couldn't believe their eyes. Even if Qin Feng's talent is unprecedented, it would be an exaggeration to defeat the first level of Taoism with a sword of the extraordinary 9 levels, right? There is an entire spiritual realm in the middle. Don't be nervous, basic operation. Luna immediately raised his eyebrows and raised his head proudly. She has personally experienced how fierce Qin Feng is. The only thing that surprised her was when Qin Feng's sword intent broke through to the second level. What? During the day, he cried out the tragic loss of his brother, fell to the ground and rolled over and over again, unable to accept the reality. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, Sui Yongji, for getting 1,000 villain points. It's another 1,000 villain credits. Qin Feng turned on the system and glanced at it. The original 47 villain points have now reached 121 million villain points, which means that the 74 brothers have lost their troubles and can concentrate on cultivation in the future. I really have immeasurable merit. Qin Feng praised his behavior, and began to read Bai Jie's story in front of Feng Chang. The audience outside the arena was completely speechless, and it was really impossible to describe this pride in ancient times with words. He obviously has the ability to instantly kill everything, but he just doesn't do anything about personnel, at this time. Since the content of the projection was not reviewed, it was switched to an exclusive interview with Ma Dugua. The young lady couldn't help but asked, Master Ma, you said before that Qin Feng is miscellaneous but not perfect, and he won't be too brilliant in this life-and-death knockout match, but now Qin Feng defeated him with a single sword at the level 9 extraordinary cultivation base. What do you think about this matter at the first level of Taoism? Ma Daigua was a little embarrassed, and he was very puzzled and said, from the sword just now, it can be seen that Qin Feng's sword intent has broken through the second level, but even if he breaks through the second level, there is no reason to defeat the Taoist sword with a single sword. A heavy day. The young lady tentatively asked, you mean, there are other powers contained in Qin Feng's sword? Could it be some special physique? Impossible, absolutely impossible, Ma Daigua said with certainty. As we all know, Qin Feng is the owner of the ancient double pupil. How could he still have a special physique? I think he probably took some kind of elixir that temporarily strengthens his strength. I see. That the audience suddenly realized that it was better than reading books for 10 years, Ma Daigua continued. Qin Feng's sword intent has broken through to the second level, which proves that he has focused his energy on the way of the sword in the past 7 years, and the supreme bone and ancient double pupil will not be too strong. Judging from defeating Bai Ri, who is ranked 153, his limit is only around 100, and he will have no advantage if he goes higher. The audience nodded repeatedly, feeling that the experts were right. The screen turns the content that could not pass the review is over, and the situation on the scene has changed again. After Feng Chang listened to Qin Feng's short composition, he could no longer suppress the demonic nature in his body, and the golden bodies of Buddha and demon behind him were also covered with cracks in an instant, and they were about to collapse completely. Damn Qin Feng! Princess Nanfeng was anxious like an ant on a hot pot, and she repeatedly asked the emperors of the Six Paths but was rejected. I also understand that Feng Chang made the Emperor of the Six Paths feel threatened, and it is impossible for Feng Chang to leave the battlefield of life and death alive, unless he is completely abolished. Bang! The golden bodies of Buddha and demon were completely shattered, turning into little stars and disappearing into the void. Puff! Feng Chang spat out a mouthful of old blood, and his breath dropped to freezing point in an instant. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for completing the task and getting a sword intent upgrade card. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for severely injuring the chosen one and gaining 50 villain points. That's it. Qin Feng was more or less disappointed, thinking that he would get another chance to draw a lottery. But soon, he set his sights on the Buddha's relic. It's not your fault to have a treasure at home, but it's your fault to use it to tempt me. As Feng Chang realized the failure of the Tao, the Buddha's light condensed by the Buddha's relic also dissipated. He stretched out his hand and the Buddha's relic fell into his hand. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for plundering the chance of the chosen son and getting a chance to draw a lottery. It's comfortable now. Qin Feng finally showed a satisfied smile, turned into a white shadow and disappeared in place. It wasn't that he didn't want to take the opportunity to kill Feng Chang, but that the chosen one was too unreasonable. Don't kill him at that time, but lose the Buddha's relic instead, so he should take it and run away as soon as he sees it. Qin Feng, return the Buddha's relic to me. Feng Chang got up in a panic and wanted to chase after him. That was the foundation of his foothold in the ancient times, but the failure of comprehension led to madness, and now he was seriously injured, and could only watch Qin Feng take away his Buddha's relic. At the same time, he couldn't figure out why Qin Feng was restrained to death every time he met him, and why he was defeated by all kinds of indiscretions, and he didn't even give him a chance to fight with all his strength. Not good. Feng Chang's face changed suddenly, and he found that the medicine in his body had begun to take effect again, and he looked at Bai Ri, who was wailing beside him, so pretty. Chapter 57. Don't come here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Hai was confused. Qin Feng ran away after getting the Buddha's relic, but he still underestimated the unreasonableness of these chosen ones, and was blocked by a boy in black just a few steps out. This person was holding a long black sword, and there was a very firm look in his eyes. His state of mind was like a calm lake without waves, and his thin body was like a sharp sword. It's the 53rd place on the ranking list, the young owner of the famous sword villa, one sword, that the audience outside the arena immediately became excited. They did not expect Qin Feng to meet Yijian. Famous sword villa is a very powerful force in the Yingyue dynasty. In this era when the sword god does not appear, they have the reputation of only one sword for 1,000 years, and one sword for thousands of years, but it is undeniable that famous sword villa does have crazy capital, and it is a holy place in the minds of sword practitioners all over the world. Especially Yijian, the Shaozhuang master of this generation, has been hailed as a sword practice wizard for thousands of years. He broke through to the first level of Taoism at a young age, comprehended the third level of sword intent, and even possessed the body of the legendary heavenly sword. Now that he meets Qin Feng, the future sword god, he knows what kind of sparks will be created when he meets Qin Feng, the future sword god. I want you to help me sharpen my sword. There is no unnecessary nonsense in a sword, and regardless of whether Qin Feng wants to fight or not, he directly pulls out the long sword in his hand, and becomes the king of swords, like a sharp sword piercing the sky, and the clear and crisp sound of the sword can be faintly heard. Echoes in the forest. So strong. Qin Feng's pupils shrank suddenly, feeling the strength of the opponent. With a first-level cultivation base, a third-level sword intent, and a body of a heavenly sword, he is definitely the strongest Tianjiao he has encountered since his debut. But what made him feel strange was that this kind of terrifying Tianjiao was not the chosen one, and he didn't hear the system's prompt swish. An incomparably fierce energy rushed towards his face, and the melodious sound of the sword suddenly resounded in the forest. The long sword in Yijian's hand erupted with dazzling sword light, dragging the brilliant light to stab at Qin Feng at an astonishing speed, setting off bursts of sharp breaking wind sounds. Qin Feng stepped out obliquely, swaying like a breeze. What a ghostly movement, like a breeze swaying, or a hurricane sweeping. A flash of surprise flashed in Yijian's eyes, his feet stomped on the ground suddenly, his whole person's aura rose a lot, and the long sword in his hand swept out, roaring like a wandering dragon, destroying afterimages in an instant. Seeing the opponent's reluctance, Qin Feng stretched out his hand and clenched the hilt of the sword, and his whole body became a sharp sword drawn from its sheath, with no sharp edge. Slash the sky and draw the sword. The crisp sound of the sword being drawn resounded in the forest, and the extremely fierce sword energy swept out, clang. The swords of the two sides collided heavily, and the piercing sound of gold and iron clashed. The audience outside the arena burst into an uproar, and saw that the two of them refused to budge an inch, surrounded by an invisible storm of sword energy, and the sword energy shot vertically and horizontally was terrifying, plowing out eye-catching sword marks on the ground. How is this possible? That the Emperor of the Six Paths and others exclaimed, frightened by Qin Feng's terror. That's right. He was frightened by Qin Feng. The layman looks at the excitement and the insider looks at the doorway. Different from the first-level Taoist cultivation in the daytime, Yijian not only has the first-level cultivation, but also has a third-level sword intent, as well as a special physique, the body of the heavenly sword, but still can only compete with Qin Feng, which means that Qin Feng has other strength bonuses. How is this possible? Yijian had no expression on his face, but his heart was filled with turmoil. His cultivation base is a whole realm higher than Qin Feng's. His sword intent comprehension is also one level higher than Qin Feng's, and he has the body of the heavenly sword to bless his combat power, but he still cannot defeat Qin Feng with a single sword. Invincible sword heart is really so terrifying. Just when Qin Feng felt that he couldn't hold on anymore, Xiaobai on his shoulder made a move, stretched out his small claws and poked at Yijian's eyes without hesitation. To be a successful hunter, you must learn how to hide yourself, be as immovable as a rock, lock on to the target, be ready to go, be as fast as the wind, and hit. Fuck. The audience outside the arena couldn't help but swear, and found that the rabbit raised by Qin Feng, like him, didn't take face seriously. What? The sword was so painful that he hurriedly backed away, almost blinding his eyes. It's just that he didn't yell like he imagined. He learned something from the battle with Qin Feng just now, and sharp sword energy surged all over his body. The whole person also seems to have been sublimated, like a lonely snow lotus standing against the wind on the cliff, exuding a power that shakes people's hearts. This is. Qin Feng felt extremely frightened at the side. He was too familiar with this scene. That's how he felt when he obtained the invincible sword heart back then, that is to say, in the battle with him. Yijian had already initially comprehended the invincible sword heart. What a joke. The system, come out to me, this perverted talent, you tell me that he is not the chosen one. The system opened the mouth and said, the other party does not have the destiny of the chosen son, but has the destiny of the villain of destiny. The villain. Together. Qin Feng froze on the spot, and a big shit came out of his heart. The protagonist encounters 3 back and forth, all of which are epic, but the villain has never been encountered before. Based on the idea that colleagues are enemies, he has no intention of cooperating with the other party, he just wants to take the opportunity to kill him, so that he will not give the protagonist experience and equipment in the future, making it more difficult for him to be a villain. This is invincible Kenshin. A sword had already touched the invincible sword heart, and the eyes looking at Qin Feng were even brighter. He wants to use Qin Feng as his own sharpening stone, so as to fully comprehend the legendary invincible sword heart. Swish. A sword dragged the blurred figures, and the long sword in his hand was swung wildly with an extremely fierce sword energy, covering the sky and covering the earth towards Qin Feng. Not good. Qin Feng decisively opened a double pupil and fought with the opponent. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of gold and iron clashing reverberated in the forest, and the invisible sword energy splashed everywhere. It's just that Qin Feng doesn't have any other sword moves other than chopping the sky and drawing the sword. He can only rely on the slow motion of double pupils to see the moves. Qin Feng is about to lose. The audience outside the venue sighed, seeing that Qin Feng was not far from defeat. His sky-slashing and sword-drawing skills are indeed amazing to the world, but once he encounters a strong enemy and fails to kill the opponent with a single sword, it means that he will be weak in succession, unless he uses the supreme bone and double eyes to fight. Think of this dash. The audience outside the arena fixed their eyes on the light curtain, ready to witness the power of the supreme bone and the ancient double pupil. It's just that Qin Feng didn't seem to have the intention of using the supreme bone and the ancient double pupil. He quickly retreated to open the distance between the two sides, and slowly put the unsheathed sky sword back into the scabbard. You're going to use the supreme bone and double pupils. Jie immediately became vigilant, not daring to be careless. You are not worthy. Qin Feng said lightly. Not worthy. The Emperor of the Six Paths and others stared at Qin Feng, wanting to see what else he could do, but when everyone was full of expectations, seeing Qin Feng waving his hands and taking out more than a dozen bottles of sows was crazy, and in the distance, he could faintly hear the most miserable voice in the world with a slightly crying voice, "Don't come here." Chapter 58 Supreme Bone vs. Heavenly Sword Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Damn Qin Feng. Princess Nanfeng was so furious that she took out her life card and prepared to call her father. The old man of the protection mission quickly stopped and said, "Princess, you must not, this is the life and death knockout match of the Inuit dynasty, and Feng Chang himself voluntarily participated in it. Now if you encounter any problems, you can find His Majesty. How will the major forces in the ancient times treat our great Xia? The dynasty will say that our great Xia dynasty can't afford it." But. Princess Nanfeng was so anxious that she almost came to her aunt. "How can it be even more difficult to see the one she loves?" The old man muttered in confusion again. "It's all like this. Why did Chief Feng not abstain from voting? It's because he has lost his mind, or he just likes it." Woo! Nanfeng seemed to have endured the last straw, covered his mouth and ran away crying. In the huge palace of the emperors of the Six Paths, the bosses of all parties heard the movement and looked at the moon god, as if saying that it was all the fault of your family, Qin Feng. "Don't look at me, I don't know him." Luna no longer has the arrogant expression of before, with an expression that I am not familiar with. Qin Feng, battlefield of life and death. Immediately after a sword strike, he lost his composure, and hurriedly took a few steps back. The news about Qin Feng's crazy use of sows in the battle of life and death has spread, and 70 candidates fell into his trick because of carelessness, and his solution to the problem was also simple and rude: broken forever. It can be said that Qin Feng who holds the sword is not terrible, but Qin Feng who smiles at you is the real terror. Too shameless. The audience outside the stadium was completely speechless. After just 2 battles, people forgot about Qin Feng's shamelessness, but who knew that he lost his moral integrity when he turned around? Whoosh! An invisible storm formed around Qin Feng, and the sows in more than a dozen jade vases were also crazily rolled up, and the fallen leaves in the forest also danced with the storm. The leaves are flying. It is the famous stunt he learned from the 10 patriarchs. After 7 years of exploration and improvement, he successfully created a set of passionate palm technique. The power may not be the strongest, and the damage may not be the highest, but obscenity is definitely recognized. One palm shot, full of passion. This is. Jien's face became extremely solemn, and he regretted coming to Qin Feng in his heart. He could clearly feel that this palm covered a huge area, not only to avoid the crazy medicine powder of the mixed sow, but also to dodge the fallen leaves that turned into cutting knives, and there must be no mistakes, otherwise Qin Feng will seize the opportunity and lose the source of happiness as a man. Go! With a slight swing of Qin Feng's palm, a strong palm wind slammed out. Call out, call out, call out. A piece of fallen leaves turned into a terrifying killer on the spot. Wherever it passed, it was cut like a chainsaw, and accompanied by a large amount of white mist, covering a radius of several hundred meters. Jie held his breath, without flinching in the slightest. The black long sword in his hand drew a perfect arc, setting off a fierce storm of sword energy in the forest. The fallen leaves that flew flying were destroyed by the sword energy, and the diffuse medicine powder was also split by the sword energy. It's now, that when Jie split a hole with sword energy, a road connecting him and Qin Feng also appeared. Qin Feng quickly put on the posture of cutting the sky and drawing the sword, calling for the system to use the sword intent obtained by completing the task to upgrade card. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for using the sword intent upgrade card. The 2nd level sword intent has been upgraded to the 3rd level sword intent. All rivers and rivers are inclusive, all in one. In a trance, Qin Feng only felt that there was an occasional flash of light in front of his eyes, a stunning and peerless sword light, and it went away month by month, swaying thousands of clouds. There must be a limit to childishness. Jie was very dissatisfied with Qin Feng's actions, and felt that Qin Feng was humiliating him, continuously using the same move on a swordsman, or the move he successfully stopped, is the greatest humiliation to a swordsman. Even if he uses his passionate palms as a cover, he can't hide his humiliation. Clang. The high-pitched and crisp sword drawing was like piercing clouds and cracking stones, which shocked everyone's minds. Wrong. This is not the heaven-slashing sword technique. Qin Feng's figure in white clothes like snow flashed like lightning, his hand as white as jade lightly held the hilt of the sky Excalibur, and he raised it up lightly, like a startled bird. The stunning sword light suddenly appeared in the forest. Draw the sword, withdraw the sword, the action is done in one go. Level, sword intent. Jien's eyes were wide open in disbelief, and he suddenly felt the cold wind blowing towards his face, which was as cold as a mountain stream. Ding. A sound of gold and iron clashing resounded in the forest, and the two figures crossed each other at an extremely fast speed. This moment, the picture seems to be frozen. Qin Feng's sword has been put back into its sheath, and the sword is standing there motionless. Only faint sobs can be heard from nearby who don't want to live in the daytime. Who's winning? The audience outside the arena raised their hearts in their throats, and their eyes were fixed on the light curtain waiting for the result. I thought that Qin Feng's second-level sword intent was already at his limit, but he didn't expect that he had already comprehended the third-level sword intent. Puff. Qin Feng couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, and there were bloodstains on his body. The invisible sword energy that surged out of Jien's body just now is definitely not ordinary sword energy, but the heavenly sword energy that comes with his heavenly sword body. However, according to the law of vomiting blood before the sword, he must be injured more than himself. Puff. According to regulations, Jien knelt on the ground with one knee, and he couldn't control the spout of blood any longer, and a big gash broke out on his body, and the blood spurted out as if he didn't need money. Qin Feng won. The audience outside the stadium couldn't believe it, and their hearts couldn't be calm for a long time. Even if Qin Feng is known as the #1 arrogance in the ancient times, his extraordinary 9-level cultivation is really not on the table, but even so, he can still defeat Jien, who is ranked 53rd in points. Jien is one of the top 10 masters in this year's Life and Death knockout tournament. This little guy is amazing. The Emperor of the Six Paths and other bigwigs couldn't calm down for a long time, and they were so shocked by Qin Feng that they were completely at a loss for words. Who would have thought that a being who was at the bottom of the extraordinary ninefold would be able to counterattack all the way to become the most dazzling boy in the audience, and he would easily defeat all the famous masters. Low-key, basic operation. Luna got up high again, with the expression I am most familiar with Qin Feng, but in my heart, I want to go back and clean up Qin Feng. She has broken through the third level of sword intent, and she is still hiding in front of her. My old lady raised you up with shit and urine. Who are you guarding against? The leaders of all parties were completely speechless, and found that Luna seemed to have no integrity. Qin Feng's ability to do those things probably has something to do with her. This child is not simple. The Emperor of the Six Paths narrowed his eyes and looked at Qin Feng, and found that his wound was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and Qin Feng's head-on collision with the sword energy of the heavenly sword, the injury should not be so light. I haven't lost yet. Jien dragged his seriously injured body to stand up again, and the invisible sword energy around him began to condense crazily, forming a huge transparent sword energy 20 meters high, which was the heavenly sword that came with his heavenly sword body. Cut out with a sword, the gods and demons dodge. Fuck, it's not over yet. Qin Feng didn't get used to anyone's faults. A golden light shone from his chest, and he could vaguely see the circulation of runes. The supreme bone, that the audience outside the stadium screamed excitedly, but they didn't expect that more exciting things were yet to come. Supreme bone versus heavenly sword body. And many more. Just as everyone was waiting for the duel between the two sides, Qin Feng suddenly called a stop, the reason being that he was going to the right to face off. Right. Everyone was dumbfounded, not knowing what to say about Duo Bo and Feng Shui. Childish. Jien didn't bother to argue with Qin Feng, and took the initiative to give up the Feng Shui position on the right. Heavenly sword. God robs the light. Boom! The two sides confronted each other, and the scattered energy uprooted the trees, and the entire area of several hundred meters was shrouded in a terrifying energy storm. This is the strength of the younger generation. The audience outside the arena couldn't help swallowing, being frightened by the young people nowadays. I have long heard that this world of great contest is particularly strong, but I didn't expect it to be so strong. Before the supreme bone confronted the body of the heavenly sword, the destructive power was so terrifying. I'll see how you stand up. Qin Feng let out a roar, and the heavenly hegemony body began to bless. How is this possible? Jin felt that he was going crazy, and he couldn't understand what kind of monster Qin Feng was. His supreme bone came from his younger brother, and he was born with the heavenly sword body, and his cultivation level was much higher than his, but he was crushed and beaten by him, and he seemed to be unable to withstand it. What the hell went wrong? Chapter 59. Who do you think you are? You are listening at Mtlnovel.audio. Boom! Before Jin could figure out what was going on, he was sent flying by Heaven Jiguang. After the energy storm was over, the surroundings returned to calm, but it became a mess, and Jin was in tatters. Panting heavily, he barely stood up, obviously unable to fight anymore. On the other hand, Qin Feng is still full of energy, and he still has a feeling of getting braver as he fights. Drink fake wine. Whether it's the audience outside the stadium or Jin on the scene, they all looked at Qin Feng as if they had seen a ghost. It was really hard for them to imagine why Qin Feng wasn't weak at all after such a fierce battle, but felt that it would be okay to continue the bridal chamber tonight. Is this the celestial hegemony body? Qin Feng found that the celestial hegemony body was much more powerful than he had imagined. In addition to not feeling tired during the battle, he could also feel that the longer the battle, the stronger the physical body would become, and finally it would evolve into an immortal golden body. It seems that I don't need to make a move. Xiaobai finally sat on Qin Feng's shoulder and ate carrots after a while of tossing. That's right, that the Emperor of the Six Paths couldn't help laughing out loud, and finally discovered Qin Feng's little secret. Just now, Qin Feng resisted the sword energy of the heavenly sword, and the injury he suffered made him feel unreasonable. You know, the heavenly sword chi that comes with the heavenly sword body is very domineering. A normal person will lose his life if he touches the heavy one lightly, and the light one will cut off his limbs to survive. On the other hand, Qin Feng didn't have any shit at all, he just suffered a little skin trauma. Now he is even more energetic, without a trace of fatigue. Apart from the legendary heavenly hegemony body born for battle, there is absolutely no second explanation. Heavenly Overlord. All the bosses in the palace were stunned, and even held a groundhog in their hearts. Nima. Possessing ancient double pupils and comprehending the invincible sword heart is enough to make people enviable, but now they have added a heavenly overlord body born for war. God, your preference is a bit too much. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Moon God shook his head again and again. Even if he was beaten to death, he would not believe that Qin Feng had the overlord body. Qin Feng has lived in the Moon God Palace since he was 8 years old, and he knows exactly what is in Qin Feng's body. If he has the heavenly overlord body, how could she not know about it? The Emperor of the Six Paths said, this is only the second day, and tomorrow will be the last day. It will be even more chaotic. The heavenly hegemony will definitely not be able to hide in that environment. The leaders of all parties looked at each other, waiting for tomorrow's final showdown. At this time, many figures suddenly appeared in all directions, looking at Qin Feng and Jin with greedy eyes. Brother Qin, we will be here for a long time, and there will be a period later. Jin naturally knew that these people were trying to make money, so he left quickly with his seriously injured body behind him. Who do you think you are? If you want to fight with me, you can fight, and if you want to leave, you can leave. Qin Feng kicked his feet hard, and his figure rushed away like a cheetah. Whoosh. The sharp sound of breaking wind startled Jin, and saw Qin Feng flashing in front of him carrying a fierce wind, and before he could react, he arranged for him to cut off his children and grandchildren with one move. What? A frightened look appeared on Jin's face. He never thought that Qin Feng would still miss his brother at this time. With a bang, chickens fly and eggs hit. With a sword, his eyes were wide open, and the piercing pain swept through his whole body. Unexpectedly, he still could not escape this move in the end. The people around who were preparing to be fishermen gasped, feeling an inexplicable coolness beneath their bodies. They really couldn't understand why Qin Feng loved Sui Dan so much. According to incomplete statistics, more than 70 brothers have been brutally murdered by him. At the same time, they are also thinking about a question: is it really necessary to provoke Qin Feng for points? Ding dong, congratulations to the host Broken Dan Yongji, for getting 1000 villain points. 1000 points arrive. Qin Feng didn't intend to stop, and looked at the people around him with a harmless smile. The number of people is not too much, just more than 100, based on a 1000 villain count, there will be 10 villain points after all the harvest. Buzz. A series of ear-piercing sword cries suddenly sounded. I saw Qin Feng quickly pinched out a finger, and the long sky sword in front of him split into 9 miniature swords, floating in the air and surrounding him. 9 swords come out. Qin Feng pinched out another finger, pointing at the 100 people around him. Call out, call out, call out. The sound of breaking the wind continued continuously, and the 9 swords pierced through the void like a meteor, without any fancy movements, and stabbed straight at their brother. What? Miserable screams came and went, one after another fell down. Run, run. Watching people continue to fall, the fear in the hearts of others is also spreading, especially after seeing the flash of the sword light. Without leaving any eggs, it was as if he had fallen into an ice cave, with the cold from the top of his head to his heels, and the transformation between the hunter and the prey was instantaneous. Ding dong, congratulations to the host Broken Dan Yongji, for getting 1000 villain points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host Broken Dan Yongji, for getting 1000 villain points. That with the constant chicken and egg beating, the system sound is also constantly ringing. Run, he's a devil. No one could bear the fear in their hearts. They turned around in fright and began to run around, and understood the horror of this ancient pride. He may not be the strongest, but he is definitely the most unscrupulous. At this time, since the picture is not suitable for children to watch, it switched to the interview with Ma Daiguo. The young lady asked which pot to open and which pot to lift, and asked, Master Ma, you said that Qin Feng was at most around 100, but now he has defeated the 54th with a sword, and he can crush hundreds of candidates in the future. What do you think? What do you think about this? Ma Daiguo said with a little embarrassment. From Qin Feng's third-level sword intent just now, it can be seen that he is not as complicated as the old man guessed, and he has been specializing in swordsmanship for the past 7 years. Qin Feng guides well. The young lady asked again, puzzled, but Qin Feng is also very proficient in using the supreme bone. It seems that he doesn't specialize in swordsmanship. Is it possible that Qin Feng is very talented and can practice multiple supernatural powers at the same time? Absolutely impossible, Ma Daiguo said with a serious expression. You must know that manpower will eventually come to an end. Qin Feng is only 15 years old since he was born. It is unprecedented to be able to practice swordsmanship to this level. At most, he will abandon his own cultivation and cultivate the Supreme Being. Bone, it is impossible to cultivate multiple supernatural powers at the same time. I see. The audience suddenly realized that it was better than reading books for 10 years. Ma Daiguo sighed again. It's a pity that Qin Feng has turned the cart before the horse. Double pupils are the way to invincibility, so why borrow someone else's bones and let your own double pupils not be repaired, and repair someone else's supreme bone? It would be a small loss. The audience nodded repeatedly, feeling that what the expert said made sense. At this time, the screen switched back again, and they were all lying on the ground and howling. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for killing a total of 104 descendants and obtaining a total of 104,000 villain points. More than, points have arrived. Qin Feng turned on the system and glanced at it. He had accumulated 726 million villain points, and there was another chance to draw a lottery that he didn't use. It's time to strengthen the wave. After several fierce battles, Qin Feng found that his cultivation was really at the bottom. Tomorrow is the last day of the life and death knockout competition, and it will inevitably lead to a fierce battle. If you want to survive in it, you must strengthen your own strength. There is also the Buddha's relic obtained from Feng Chang, which also needs to be studied carefully. The broken eggs are flicked away, and the achievements and fame are hidden. As Qin Feng left, the camera showed Feng Chang. I saw him running wildly through the forest in messy clothes, with tears falling from the corners of his eyes. Cannot go back. He can't go back. Even if they knew that Princess Nanfeng was poisoned that night, it would be impossible for them to go back in time. Chapter 60. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sin, that the audience outside shook their heads and sighed, deeply sympathizing with Feng Chang's experience. He obviously has terrifying strength, but he just doesn't do serious things. It's not scary to see Qin Feng holding a sword, but it's scary to see Qin Feng smiling at you. Run, run, if you don't run, it will be too late. At the same time, they are also very curious about what immoral things Qin Feng will do next. Why is this happening? That even though Princess Nanfeng was mentally prepared, she still couldn't accept the exact news. How could that handsome young man Feng Chang, who was full of talent and learning, turn his hands into clouds while talking and laughing, be ruined like this? No, it seems that he ruined others. This person is not worthy of his name. That the old man of the protection mission suddenly sighed. Since Chang became the staff member of Princess Nanfeng 7 years ago, he has indeed injected new vitality into the declining Great Xia, allowing the Great Xia royal family to see the possibility of taking back power from the family. During this period, Feng Chang did not change his face when Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, as if everything was under his control, which also made the Great Xia royal family trust him more and more. There is also his talent and learning, which is an eternal quatrain at every turn, and it is absolutely necessary to fascinate the princesses of the royal family. But this trip to the Yinhua dynasty was completely passive and was sabotaged by Qin Feng time and time again. If once or twice is a coincidence, then 3 or 4 times is definitely not a coincidence. Ever since Feng Chang set up a trick for Zhu Tu to provoke Qin Feng probably already guessed what he wanted to do. As a result, Feng Chang was pushed into a desperate situation step by step. Even if he was blackened, Qin Feng restrained him to death, and finally put his innocence into it. Alas, Sin! You plot against me, I plot against you. It's not that you don't report. Before the time comes, his retribution is Qin Feng. The name is not worthy of the name. Even if Princess Nanfeng didn't want to face it, she still had to face it. For Feng Chang, she has a heart of admiration, but she is even more ambitious. She wants to ascend to the throne of God as a daughter, and whoever says women are inferior to men, she wants to show the world the birth of the first female emperor in the history of Great Xia. But now Feng Chang is obviously not Qin Feng's opponent. Is it really necessary for her to bet all her treasures on Feng Chang? At this time Feng Chang, who was already decadent, stood up again. Even if his body and soul were hit twice, he couldn't just bow his head to fate like this. He wants revenge. He wanted to trample Qin Feng under his feet, and let Qin Feng know the horror of the traverser. Feng Chang's face was extremely gloomy, and he limped and turned away. The tears in the corners of his eyes proved that the unbearable dark history was still a dark history known to the whole world. Qin Feng. Princess Nanfeng also had cold eyes. Her small fists were clenched and rattling. He vowed to smash Qin Feng's thief into thousands of pieces, not only humiliate her in every possible way, but also give his beloved man to Huohucheng. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for ravaging the body and mind of the chosen one and gaining 30 villain points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for leaving permanent psychological damage to the Son of Heaven, and getting a chance to draw a lottery. Destroyed. Inexplicably, a picture that is not suitable for children appeared in Qin Feng's mind, and he was so frightened that he hurriedly shivered to interrupt the picture. However, he would obviously not refuse one more chance to draw a lottery. In this case, I will have 2 chances to draw a lottery. Qin Feng found a hidden cave, which is specially for the contestants to rest. Entering it will no longer be broadcast live, and he can't wait to call the system to start the lucky draw. Whoa. The big turntable appeared in front of Qin Feng again, and it started to turn slowly. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining the God-level sword art, sword art. In an instant, Qin Feng seemed to see a rushing river in front of his eyes, which was composed of countless sword auras. What a great river sword art! Qin Feng exhaled deeply, shocked by the day sword art. Now he doesn't know any other sword moves except heaven slashing and drawing swordsmanship, so if he can't kill the opponent with one sword, he has to face the embarrassing situation that he has no moves to use. The appearance of day sword art just relieved this embarrassment. The 30 villain points just obtained are exactly enough for 100 million. Qin Feng cast a glance at his villain points. He has already accumulated 1,026 million points, which is enough to exchange for a 100% fit card to unleash the strongest power of day sword art. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for spending 100 million villain points and successfully redeeming the Dzogchen 100% fit card. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully using the Dzogchen 100% fit card and raising the day sword art to the Dzogchen realm. Buzz. Countless sword chi surged out of Qin Feng's body, like a rushing river began to roar. Xiao Bai, who was eating carrots, immediately stood up, and had some experience with the sword energy released by Qin Feng, and it was one step closer to becoming a peerless sword rabbit. I do not know how long it has been. Qin Feng slowly opened his eyes were as dark as ink, and there was a faint sharpness that broke through the sky, and he had completely penetrated the profound meaning of the day sword art. Not bad. Qin Feng nodded in satisfaction, and called the system to continue the lottery draw. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for drawing a god-level mark, unyielding will. Unyielding will, god-level mark. Those who have this mark will be immune to any spiritual attack between heaven and earth. Nice one. The not too long information introduction made Qin Feng quickly integrated. In the cultivation practice of Huanggu, spiritual attack is soul attack, and it is also the most rogue attack. It cannot be seen or touched, and if you are not careful, you will be hit by the Tao. I heard that powerful spiritual attackers can also imprint slave marks on human souls, and lose their freedom and become slaves. Now with this unyielding will, there is no need to worry about that kind of hooligan attack. Next, it's the Buddha's relic. Qin Feng took out the Buddha's relic, and the golden light instantly lit up the dark cave, and the dragon-shaped tattoo on his body also began to stir inexplicably, as if he had encountered some kind of natural treasure. Dawei Tianlong is a Buddhist kung fu. What effect will it have if fused with the Buddha's relics? Qin Feng was also very curious about this, so he did what he said, and began to refine the Buddha's relics on the spot. Boom. When Qin Feng merged into the Buddha's relic, terrifying and almost violent energy spread from the Buddha's relic. Qin Feng's body trembled violently, and he clearly felt the turbulence of qi and blood in his body, as if a raging fire had been set off, burning his bones and flesh and blood. In an instant, a heart-piercing pain overwhelmed Qin Feng's nerves, and he swore he had never experienced such pain. Qin Feng, what's wrong with you? Xiao Bai also sensed that something was wrong, anxious like an ant on a hot pot, regardless of whether it was useful or not, took out the bamboo slips of saints and put them in Qin Feng's hands, hoping to help him resist the energy of the Buddha's relic. At this time, a group of people gathered outside the cave, talking in whispers. Do you really want to deal with Qin Feng? This guy has no lower limit. I heard that nearly 200 brothers have become sisters. Let's not provoke him. Qin Feng is currently ranked 51st in terms of points, and his cultivation is at the bottom. There is no one who is easier to deal with than him. What if he still has a sow on his body and is crazy? Don't worry, Geo will last forever. Chrysanthemum is undefeated. We will not leave.